Well, the story of this whole project is really about values. It's about the way we value young children, but it was important to us to place this museum in a setting that was surrounded by beauty and in a setting that really offered so much familiarity and such a spirit of welcoming and health and wellness, and it seemed very natural. So we embarked on a long conversation with decision makers at City Park to select the site and then to select the location on the site where we would construct the museum and the gardens. It's a big step to go into the middle of a great green space and to build new construction, and we were very careful in our stewardship and our respect of sustainability as we developed the plans and understood how we could turn this green space into a new set of resources.
One thing that we did as a part of the early planning is we talked about a view of the child as being strong and competent and capable. And, we know from research over the last 40 years, we've only learned more and more how capable children are in so many different ways from birth on. And we took that image of the child as being strong and capable really seriously and put it at the center of the planning. And we took characteristics that we know are true about children and also extremely centered on the kind of experience the museum wanted to provide that was grounded in the mission and the vision. One of the things that this project did really well is that it continued to bring in members of the community, children and parents and grandparents and teachers, partner organizations, people from colleges and universities to help us think at different points along the process, along the way.
It really started at the very beginning with our very first conversation that I had with Julia when she called and said, we selected you. How do you want to start? And I said, I'd kind of like to start with listening to the children, see what they have to say. She said, well, have you done that before? And I said, no, not really. And she was willing to go on that journey with me and all of us together, kind of learning as we went. And it was really a remarkable journey that I think it opened our eyes up to all the capability and the potential that children have just by listening to them from day one. And we saw that they already knew so much. They had so much creativity and so many ideas they wanted to share. And it was just an amazing process altogether. So that was our first influence as a kid.
There are lots of ways to really tell the story about children's potential, but one of the ways that we have particularly loved is incorporating the artwork created by young children.
This really represents a child's view of the world. This is the child's view of the world, and we didn't want to turn it into some, cartoon of what we might, do to it. But instead, we wanted it to be about the children and their thinking.
I think one of the things we learned from Reggio is about respect for children and that the design can be sophisticated in many levels, but also rich experientially. So it can be really fun, but also have things that families can enjoy that all ages.
It's one thing to create a building, a structure, and grounds, and it's another thing to bring that to life. And I think the beauty of our process was that each design perspective was integrated with the other. And so as we created the physical building, we were thinking about what happens in it, not just how do you enter and move through, but also where does the inspiration, where do the connections get made, where does the learning happen, and what does this mean for a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old?
I think an underlying story that was so strong to us was about the state of Louisiana, where water and land are in a constant interaction throughout the state. And it feels like this site really wanted to celebrate how water and land came together. It did make a promise to Julia that we would design a place that could only be on this site. And it started with some of the extant site elements like the live oak trees. So working around the live oaks, We worked around a building that would interconnect through the site, and we call it the choreography of experience. When a child arrives, how do they come on site? How do they move through it? So when you come across the bridge with the fog sculpture, you are arriving across the water onto the porch and then into the museum, so that your very arrival and movement through the building and the site is part of the total experience for children and families as they come. We are working with Wagner Ball, our local architects, had discussions about what were some of the key elements of New Orleans. One is the courtyard. So the courtyard's a very important part of how the whole museum wraps around a courtyard that opens to the water. The front porch, the louvers and shading. So these large overhangs and porches give this both a gracious entry, they provide shade, but they also provide kind of a civic sensibility to the whole kind of a lagoon side of the museum. As it got to the details, Julia and her team were really great at working with local artists. So we engaged with Mitchell Gaudet, who did these wonderful, we called the Mardi Gras beads, because originally Mardi Gras beads were glass, and that are along the entry rail that both, when sun comes through, they kind of glow with this beautiful color that children can spin them. And then they also became a donation element as different people engraved their names on them as a part of the donation. So it served multiple functions, but also felt like it was something unique to New Orleans. That the building itself is elevated 5 feet because the site was underwater during Hurricane Katrina, so making sure it's resilient in that way. A bioclimatic response, it's responding to the sun and the heat. Large overhangs for porches with shade and louvers to provide protection around the building. Areas where we didn't have that, to use fritting on the glass to reduce solar heat gain.
Probably one of the largest challenges in our world these days is water and managing water. In Southeast Louisiana, we have an abundance of water. It comes from all directions and all forms. And it's our future. The management and the thoughtful management of water is such an important part of our future and our strategic thinking in the years ahead.
We knew from the beginning that this project was intended to be a pilot project for the New Orleans Water Plan, and led us to think about is how can we demonstrate the New Orleans Water Plan at a certain scale that people can understand and kind of take lessons from. And so that was part of the foundation of the design, as really an example of how to think about and treat water in New Orleans. And the benefit of doing it at a children's museum is it forces you to make it fun from the beginning. But really, as a designer, we should always be making these practices fun and enjoyable and beautiful, because that's going to make people want to actually do it themselves, that it's not something that's onerous or difficult or ugly. So we have to make it fun. We have to make resilience beautiful.
If each layer of the design comes in and they all can be working together, it kind of reinforces and builds a richer and richer experience. And I felt that with the exhibit design and the environmental graphics, it was really, and landscape, of course, we're all aligned and kind of seeking this child-centered experience, this connection to the community, and things that were really strong experientially. So we felt that for this is one of the strongest projects ever, where all of those were able to come together to make both a really rich environment, but it feels unified in a certain way in terms of everything from color and design to the philosophy behind them.
I think this project has really changed the way we think of what children's museums are and should be and could be. And so the award is such an affirmation. This is important. We need to keep doing it better and better and better and learn from each other.
One of my favorite things to hear in this museum, and it happens with great frequency, is a child saying, "I did it." That's such a moment of joy and an expression of success. And every time I hear that, I just want to say, yes.